The fine rain of Porto created a translucent curtain over the windows of the Infante Sagres Hotel. Luis adjusted his tie for the third time in 5 minutes, watching the movement in Felipe de Lencastre Square through the foggy glass. 10 years away from Portugal, and yet the city greeted him with the same familiar melancholy that he carried in his deepest memories. His phone vibrated in his blazer pocket. A message from his company confirmed the next day's meeting with the Portuguese investors. Everything was running according to plan for this business trip that could define his career in Brazil. At 32, Luis had built a solid reputation as a financial consultant in São Paulo. But this opportunity to expand into the European market represented the pinnacle of everything he had worked for. He descended to the hotel lobby with determined steps, carrying the leather briefcase he had received as a graduation gift. The elegant atmosphere, decorated in golden tones and dark wood, breathed history and tradition. A few people circulated discreetly: business people, tourists, families on vacation. That's when he saw her. Caterina stood near the reception desk, holding the hand of a little girl with straight hair who couldn't have been more than 7 years old. She wore a simple floral dress, and her blonde hair was tied in a low bun, exactly as she used to do at the university. For a moment, Luis felt as if time had completely stopped. 10 years. 10 years since he had left her to accept that scholarship in Brazil. 10 years since their last argument. The tears, the broken promises that they would see each other again. Caterina looked up and recognized him instantly. The surprise on her face was a mirror of his own, a mix of shock, nostalgia, and something undefinable that made his heart race. "Luis?" Her voice came out as a whisper. He approached slowly, as if he feared she would disappear if he moved too abruptly. "Caterina, I can't believe it's you." The girl beside her watched him with curiosity, distractedly swinging a cloth doll in her arms. "What are you doing here?" Caterina asked, still processing the situation. "Work. Business trip." Luis gestured vaguely toward the elevators. "And you?" We were just..." She seemed to search for words, clearly disturbed by the unexpected encounter. "Beatriz, dear, this is an old friend of Mommy's." The little girl smiled shyly and waved. Louise knelt to her height. "Hello, Beatriz. What a beautiful name you have." "Thank you," she replied, with the naturalness typical of children. "Mommy said we're going to have hot chocolate here at the hotel today." Louise looked up at Caterina, who blushed slightly. "It was a promise I made to her after some difficult things this week." There was a silence heavy with unspoken meanings. Louise could see that there was much more behind those words, but this was neither the moment nor the place for deep questions. Can I join you?" The question came out before he could think better of it. "I mean, if it's not a bother, it would be good to talk, to remember the old times." Caterina hesitated for a few seconds that felt like an eternity, then nodded slowly. Of course you can." The hotel bar was cozy, with leather armchairs arranged around low wooden tables. They sat close to the fireplace, where the fire crackled softly. Beatrice immediately became interested in the cookies that came with the hot chocolate, leaving the adults with a little more privacy to talk. "So, Brazil," Caterina said, distractedly stirring her drink. "How has it been?" "Different. Very different from what I imagined when I left." Louise watched the expressions that crossed her face as he spoke. "Sao Paulo is a city that consumes people, you know? I worked a lot to build a solid career, but sometimes I wonder if it was worth it, if the choices I made were the right ones." Caterina lowered her eyes. "We all make choices, Louise, and we have to live with them. And you? What has your life been like?" "Beatriz she's beautiful," Thank you. A genuine smile illuminated Katerina's face for the first time since they had met again. She's everything to me. Absolutely everything. And her father? The question hung in the air like a shadow. Katerina took a while to answer, and when she did, her voice was lower. He hasn't been part of our lives for a long time. Louise felt a pang of something he couldn't define. Curiosity, protectiveness, maybe even hope. Katerina, Mommy, can I go see the fish? Beatriz interrupted, pointing to a decorative aquarium in the corner of the bar. Of course, dear, but stay where I can see you. As the girl walked away, Katerina and Louise fell silent, watching her play. There was so much they wanted to say, so much that needed to be clarified, but words seemed insufficient to fill the decade-long distance. She has your eyes, Louise said softly. Do you think so? Yes, and your stubbornness too, from what I can see. Katerina laughed for the first time, a sound Louise hadn't heard in so long that he almost forgot how it made him feel complete. Some things never change. Others change completely, he replied, his tone becoming more serious. Katerina, I wanted to apologize for the way things ended between us, for the way I left without. Louise, she interrupted him gently. That was a long time ago. We were different people then. But I can't help but think that if I had stayed, if I had fought more, the ifs, Katerina shook her head. We could spend our whole lives wondering about the ifs. The truth is, you made your decision, and I made mine. Beatriz came back, running, interrupting the tense moment. Mommy, the man at the bar said the fish are from Japan. How interesting, dear. Louise, the girl turned to him with the confidence that only children possess. Do you like fish? Yes, I do, Beatriz. In fact, when I was little like you, I wanted to be a marine biologist. Really? And what happened? Louise smiled. Life happened, little one. Sometimes our dreams change as we grow up. That's a shame. I want to be a veterinarian when I grow up, to take care of all the animals in the world. That's a beautiful dream. Katerina watched their interaction with an expression Louise couldn't fully decipher. There was tenderness there, but also something that looked like melancholy, maybe even pain. Well, Katerina said finally, checking her watch, I think it's time for us to go. Beatriz has school tomorrow. Early? Already? The girl pouted. But I wanted to talk more with Louise about the fish. Maybe another time, dear. Louise felt a sudden urgency, as if letting Katerina leave now meant losing her forever all over again. Katerina, wait. I'll be in Porto for a few days, for business. Maybe we could, I don't know, have dinner together, or coffee, to talk properly. She hesitated again, and Louise could see the internal struggle reflected in her eyes. I don't know if that's a good idea, Louise. Please, just as old friends. Beatriz looked from one to the other, clearly sensing the emotional tension in the air without fully understanding what was happening. Okay, Katerina said finally, but it has to be something simple. I don't want to create unnecessary expectations. Of course, completely simple. They exchanged phone numbers. Louise helped them with their coats, and within a few minutes, they were at the hotel entrance, saying goodbye. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets of Porto glistening under the light of the streetlights. It was good to see you, Louise, Katerina said, her voice filled with contained emotions. For me too. More than you can imagine. Beatriz waved enthusiastically as they walked away, and Louise stood at the hotel entrance until they disappeared around the corner. Back in his room, he sat on the edge of the bed holding his phone, looking at Katerina's number he had just saved. So many questions, so many emotions, so many possibilities opening up before him. Outside, Porto slept under a starry sky, and Luis knew that his life had just changed completely once again. The question was, for better or for worse, the only certainty he had was that he wouldn't be able to sleep that night. Luis woke up before his alarm clock. His sleep had been fragmented, filled with confusing dreams where Katerina appeared and disappeared like a mirage. He got up and walked to the hotel window, watching the morning movement on the streets of Porto. The city woke up slowly, with its old trams gliding down the hills and the aroma of fresh coffee rising from the bakeries. His phone showed 3 unread messages, 2 related to work and 1 from Katerina sent at 6:30 a.m. "Hi, Louise. I thought all night about yesterday. How about we meet today at 7 p.m.? I know a small, reserved restaurant near Ribera. If you still want to, of course." Louise's heart raced. She had thought about him all night, just as he had thought about her. He typed and deleted several responses before settling on something simple. "Of course I do. Send me the address. Can't wait." The reply came almost immediately. "Restaurant O Diplomata, Rua de São João, at 7 p.m. The workday passed in a blur. Luis attended meetings, presented numbers, discussed strategies, but his mind constantly returned to Katerina. What would that conversation be like? What did she mean by difficult things? And why wasn't Beatriz's father a part of their lives? At 6:30 p.m., Luis was ready, wearing a black shirt that always received compliments and discreet dress pants. He wanted to look elegant but not overly formal. After all, Katerina had emphasized that it should be simple. The restaurant O Diplomata was exactly as she had described: small, cozy, with dark wooden tables and lit candles, creating an intimate atmosphere. Luis arrived first and chose a corner table, from where he could watch the entrance. Katerina arrived promptly at 7 p.m., wearing a simple gray dress and her hair loose over her shoulders. Luis stood up to greet her, and for a moment they didn't know whether to kiss each other on the cheek, shake hands, or just smile. They opted for a quick, polite hug, but Luis could smell her perfume, the same one from 10 years ago. "Sorry I'm late," she said, even though she was on time. "You're right on time," Luis replied, pulling out her chair. "What a nice place. I come here sometimes. It's quiet, the food is good, and—" She hesitated. "And we're not likely to run into anyone we know." There was something about that last sentence that intrigued Luis, but he decided not to press. They ordered port wine and some appetizers, establishing a comfortable conversational rhythm. "So," Katerina said, swirling the glass in her hands, "tell me about Brazil. Really, what has your life been like there?" Luis sighed. "It's complicated. Sao Paulo is a city that never sleeps, never stops. I built a solid career. I have a nice apartment in Pinheiros, a good car. I travel a lot for work, but sometimes I feel like I'm living someone else's life, as if I followed a predetermined script, without ever stopping to think if that's what I really wanted." Katerina nodded slowly. "I understand completely. And you? Tell me about your life, about Beatriz, about everything." Katerina's face closed slightly. "My life has been intense. After you left, I finished my architecture degree. As planned, I started working at a small firm here in Porto." "And that's where you met Beatriz's father?" Katerina drank a little wine before answering. "Not exactly. Actually," she stopped, seeming to gather courage. "Actually, I got pregnant with Beatriz 2 years after you left. Her father was a co-worker, someone I thought could help me forget you." Luis felt a pang in his chest. "And did it work?" "For a while, I thought so. We dated for almost a year. When I found out I was pregnant, we got engaged. He seemed excited about the idea of being a father." "Seemed?" Katerina lowered her eyes. "When Beatriz was born, he changed completely. He said he wasn't ready for the responsibility, that he had rushed into things. A week after we got home from the hospital, he packed his bags and disappeared from our lives. My God, Katerina, I'm so sorry. You don't need to feel sorry for me, Louise. I know it might sound sad, but in fact, it was a relief. I realized I didn't truly love him. I was just trying to fill a void that... She stopped abruptly. A void that you had left when you left. The words hung in the air between them. Louise reached out and lightly touched her hand on the table. Katerina, Let me finish. She interrupted him gently. I'm not telling you this to make you feel guilty. I'm telling you because you deserve to know the truth. I've spent the last 7 years raising Beatriz alone, building a new life, learning to be strong in a way I never thought I could. And you succeeded. Anyone can see how amazing you are as a mother. Thank you. She smiled for the first time that night. Beatriz is truly everything to me. She saved me, in a way. She gave me a purpose, a reason to move forward. And now? What's your life like now? Katerina sighed. Complicated. I work as a freelance architect, which gives me flexibility to take care of Beatriz, but it also makes my income inconsistent. Sometimes it's hard to balance everything. And relationships? Sorry for the indiscreet question, but I've had a few dates over the years. Nothing serious. It's hard to find someone who accepts a relationship where the child always comes first. And to be honest, she hesitated again. To be honest, I never managed to forget. You completely. I know it sounds pathetic after so much time, but... It's not pathetic, Louise said quickly, because I never managed to forget you either. They looked at each other in silence for a few moments, the weight of their mutual confession hanging between them. Louise, do you have a girlfriend in Brazil? Katerina asked, breaking the silence. No, I've had a few relationships, but nothing that lasted more than a few months. My friends always joke that I'm a workaholic, but the truth is I never found someone who made me feel what I felt when I was with you. Katerina closed her eyes for a moment, as if she was processing everything she had just heard. This makes everything so much more complicated, she said finally. Why? Because I spent 10 years trying to get over you, Louise. 10 years building a life where you didn't exist. And now you show up here telling me exactly what I've always wanted to hear. But you're going to leave again. In a few days, you're going to go back to Brazil, to your life there. And I'll stay here with Beatriz, trying to explain to a 7-year-old girl why Mommy is sad again. The truth of Katerina's words hit Louise like a punch to the stomach. She was right. He had a life in Sao Paulo. Commitments. Responsibilities. He couldn't just abandon everything and stay in Porto, just as he couldn't ask her to drop her life to go with him to Brazil. Ah, yes, but... he started, but was interrupted by Katerina's phone ringing. Sorry, it's the babysitter, she said, answering quickly. The conversation was brief, but Louise could tell by the change in her expression that something was wrong. What is it? He asked when she hung up. Beatriz has a fever. It's nothing serious, but she's asking for me. I need to go. Of course. Let's go, Louise said, already signaling to the waiter. You don't have to. Katerina, of course I'm coming with you. If Beatriz is sick, you shouldn't go alone. She looked at him with an expression of gratitude mixed with something that could be love. Thank you. The taxi drove through the streets of Porto in silence. Katerina was visibly worried, and Louise held her hand, offering the comfort he could. When they arrived at her building, an old but well-kept one in the city center, they ran up the 3 flights of stairs. The babysitter, a middle-aged woman, greeted them at the door. She's better now, she said. The fever went down a bit, but she got very agitated, asking when you would come back. Katerina ran to the room and Louise followed her. Beatriz was lying in bed, holding the same cloth doll from the day before. When she saw her mother, her little face lit up. Mommy, you came back? Of course I came back, darling. How are you feeling? Better. And look, Louise came with you. Beatriz smiled at him, and Louise felt something stir in his chest. The girl didn't seem sick anymore, just tired. Hi, Beatriz. Your mom was very worried about you. I know, but now I'm fine. Can I get up? Katerina touched her daughter's forehead. The fever is gone. You can get up, but you have to promise you'll rest. I promise. Louise, do you want to see my room? I have some drawings of the fish you talked about yesterday. Louise looked at Katerina, who nodded. Beatriz's room was small but cozy, with colorful drawings taped to the walls and some books scattered on the table. She proudly showed him her drawings of golden fish, explaining every detail with the seriousness of a consummate artist. You draw very well, Louise said, genuinely impressed. Mommy teaches me. She draws houses for her work. Louise looked around and noticed some of Katerina's architectural projects scattered on the living room table. She had really become a talented architect. After Beatriz went to sleep, Katerina made tea for the two of them, and they sat on the small sofa in the living room. I'm sorry the night ended like this, she said. You don't need to apologize. In fact, it was good to see you two together, at home, to see how you live. And what did you think? Louise looked around the apartment. It was small but cozy, full of life, of love, of little details that told the story of a mother and daughter who had built a home together. I think you've built something very beautiful here, Katerina. Something real. Thank you. She smiled, but her eyes still carried the sadness from their earlier conversation. Louise, about what we talked about at the restaurant. We don't need to solve everything tonight, he said gently. I know it's complicated. I know I have no right to show up here after 10 years and mess up your life. You're not messing up my life. You're just bringing back things I was sure I had gotten over. They were silent for a few moments, drinking their tea and lost in their own thoughts. Louise. Katerina, he said finally. Can I ask you a question? Of course. If you could go back in time, would you do things differently? Would you have stayed in Portugal? The question he had asked himself thousands of times over the years. Louise took a while to answer. Honestly, I don't know. At the time, it seemed like going to Brazil was the only chance to have professional success. But now, seeing you, seeing Beatriz, seeing the life you've built together, yes, I think I would do things differently. And now? What are you going to do now? Now, Louise said, standing up and walking to the window. Now, I have a few more days here in Porto to find out. When he turned around, Katerina was looking at him with an expression that mixed hope and fear. Katerina, he said, coming back to her, I know I have no right to ask this, but would you give me a chance to show you that I'm not the same man who left 10 years ago? What exactly are you proposing? I don't know yet, but I know I don't want to leave Porto without exploring what still exists between us. I know it's complicated. I know there's Beatriz to consider. I know my life is in Brazil, but maybe it's time to stop living based on fear and start living based on love. Katerina looked him in the eyes for a long moment. Then, slowly, she reached out and touched his face. You were always very good with words, she said softly. This time, they're not just words. And when Louise leaned in to kiss her, Katerina didn't pull away. The kiss was soft, hesitant at first, but filled with 10 years of longing and pent-up love. When they separated, both knew there was no turning back. Regardless of what happened from there on, their lives had changed forever that night. And now? Katerina whispered. Now, Louise replied, holding her face in his hands. Now, we'll find out together. Louise woke up the next morning with a feeling he hadn't experienced in years. genuine anticipation for the day ahead. The kiss the night before had been gentle, but loaded with meaning. When they said goodbye at the door of Katerina's apartment, they had agreed to meet that afternoon for a walk through the city. "I want you to see Porto through my eyes," she had said. After quickly resolving some work issues over the phone, Louise was free for the rest of the day. Katerina had suggested they meet at Lalo bookstore at 2 p.m., and he arrived a few minutes before the scheduled time. The famous bookstore was as busy as ever, with tourists admiring the red staircase and colorful stained glass windows. Louise was flipping through a book on Portuguese architecture when he felt a hand on his shoulder. "Found something interesting?" Katerina was by his side, wearing a light blue blouse and jeans, her hair tied in a ponytail. She looked younger, more relaxed than the night before. "Actually, yes," he replied, showing her the book. "I was looking at some restoration projects for historic buildings. It's fascinating how you manage to preserve history while maintaining modern functionality." "That's exactly what I work on," Katerina smiled. "Most of my freelance projects are restorations of old houses here in the historic center." "Really? That must be incredible work." "It is, but also frustrating sometimes. Many owners want to modernize everything without respecting the original features. It's a constant battle between preservation and practicality." They left the bookstore and walked through the narrow streets of the center, Katerina pointing out architectural details that Louise had never noticed before. She spoke with passion about her work, her eyes sparkling when she explained how she had solved a certain structural problem or how she managed to convince a client to keep a historical element. "You've changed," Louise said, as they stopped to have coffee at a small bakery. "What do you mean?" "At the university, you were more reserved. Now I see a confidence in you that didn't exist before. It's as if you've found your true calling." Katerina blushed slightly. "I think being a mother changes you. It forces you to be stronger, more determined. I can't afford to be insecure when I have Beatriz depending on me." "Where is she now?" "At school. She gets out at 4 p.m. I thought we could pick her up together, if you want. She was very excited yesterday talking about you." Louise's heart warmed. "I would love that." They continued walking, descending toward the Ribeira. The afternoon sun painted the colorful facades of the buildings with a golden light, and the Douro River shone placidly. There was a different energy between them today. Less tense, more natural. "Katerina," Louise said, when they sat on a bench overlooking the river. "I need to ask you a question." "Go ahead." "Yesterday you mentioned difficult things from last week. What happened?" Katerina sighed and was silent for a few moments, watching the seagulls flying over the river. "I lost a big client," she said finally. "A restoration project I had been developing for months. The client decided to hire a bigger, more established firm. He said he needed more guarantees." "I'm sorry." "The worst part isn't even losing the project. It's that this job represented the financial stability that Beatriz and I need. I was counting on that income to be able to reduce my hours on other projects and spend more time with her." Louise saw the frustration in her eyes. "And now? Now I'll have to take on more jobs, small ones, spend more nights awake drawing, fewer free weekends. It's a vicious cycle. The more I need to work, the less time I have to be present in her life. Have you ever thought about partnering with a bigger firm, having the security of a fixed salary?" Katerina shook her head. "I've tried, but most firms here are still very traditional. They want architects who can work late, travel when necessary, be available at any time. When I mention that I have a young daughter and need flexibility, the conversation usually ends there." Louise felt a pang of anger. "That's absurd. You're clearly talented." "Talent doesn't pay the bills, Louise. And in the real world, being a single mother is still seen as a professional inconvenience." They were silent for a few minutes. Louise watched Katerina's profile, admiring her strength and determination, but also recognizing the weight she carried alone. "What if—" he started, then stopped. "What if what?" "Nothing. Sorry. It's not my life. I have no right to suggest anything." "Louise, say it. What were you going to say?" He took a deep breath. "What if you considered expanding your horizons? Working with international clients, maybe. With today's technology, you can work for people all over the world." "I've thought about that, but it's complicated. Time zone differences, legal issues, language. The language wouldn't be a problem. You've always spoken perfect English. And what about Brazilian clients? Sao Paulo is going through a boom in historic building restorations. There's a lot of money invested in that, and a lot of people looking for specialized professionals." Katerina looked at him with interest. "You know this market?" "I know some real estate investors, people who would love to have access to a European perspective, someone with real experience in historical preservation." "That would be interesting," she said slowly. "I'm not suggesting anything definitive," Louise was quick to clarify. "I just think you underestimate the value of your work. What you do here in Porto is extraordinary, and I'm sure there would be a market for it in other places." Katerina smiled. "Thank you. It's good to hear that from someone who understands business." They walked to Beatriz's school, an old building with a courtyard full of children playing. When the girl saw Louise waiting with her mother, her face lit up. "Louise, you came to pick me up from school." "Your mom invited me," he replied, kneeling to her height. "How was your day?" "It was great. I drew more fish in art class, and the teacher said I have talent." "Of course you do. I saw your drawings yesterday and was impressed." Beatriz naturally held Louise's hand as they walked, chattering about her science class, where she had learned about marine life. "Mommy," Beatriz said suddenly, "can Louise have dinner with us tonight?" Katerina and Louise looked at each other over the girl's head. "Well," Katerina said carefully, "Louise must have other plans." "Actually, I don't," Louise said quickly. "If you'll have me, I would love to." "Yay!" Beatriz jumped with joy. "I can show you my other drawings." Back at the apartment, Katerina prepared a simple dinner, pasta with tomato sauce and a salad, while Louise helped Beatriz with her homework at the living room table. It was a common domestic scene, but for Louise, it seemed extraordinarily special. "Louise," Beatriz said as they did math problems, "do you have children?" The question caught him by surprise. "No, I don't." "Why not?" "Well, I never found the right person to have children with." Beatriz frowned, processing the information. "But do you like children?" "Yes, I do, very much." "Then, could you have children with Mommy?" Louise almost choked and could hear Katerina drop something in the kitchen. "Beatriz," Katerina called, clearly embarrassed. "That's not how it works, darling." "Why not?" the girl asked, with the innocence typical of her age. Louise looked at Katerina, who was red with embarrassment, and decided to answer with age-appropriate honesty. "Well, Beatriz, having children is a very important decision that adults need to make together, after they know each other very well and are sure they want to build a family." "But you already know each other. Mommy told me you were friends for a long time." "That's true, but I live very far away in Brazil." "Then you can come live here, or Mommy and I can go live in Brazil." The silence that followed was heavy with tension. Beatriz had touched on the core issue that had hung over them all since their reunion. "Darling," Katerina said gently, coming to sit at the table, "adult things are more complicated than that. Luis has his job in Brazil, and we have our life here." "But he can get a new job, can't he?" Louise looked at Katerina, seeing the same question Beatriz had asked on her face. Could he really give up everything in Brazil? Would it be possible to start over? "You're right, Beatriz," he said finally. "People can get new jobs, but it's a very big decision that needs to be thought through carefully." During dinner, Beatriz continued to ask questions about Brazil, what the houses were like, if there were beaches, and if the fish were different from those in Portugal. Luis answered patiently, but his mind was elsewhere, processing the implications of that conversation. After Beatriz went to sleep, Caterina and Luis stayed in the living room, drinking wine and talking in low voices. "Sorry for the interrogation," Caterina said. "From her," Luis said. "She's still at the age where she thinks everything is simple." "Maybe it is simple, and we're the ones who complicate it," Luis replied. "You really think so?" "I don't know, but I know that being here with you two today was one of the best days I've had in years." "Luis," Caterina hesitated, "I need to tell you something. I talked to my sister this morning. I told her about our reunion." "And what did she say?" "She reminded me of something I had forgotten, or maybe tried to forget." "What?" Caterina took a deep breath. "Do you remember our last argument before you left?" Luis frowned. "I remember. It was terrible. We both said things we shouldn't have. Do you remember what I asked you? You asked me not to go, to find a way to stay together. And do you remember your answer?" Luis closed his eyes, the memory returning with painful clarity. "I said that if you truly loved me, you would understand that I needed to do this, that I needed to pursue my dreams." "And I replied, you said that if I truly loved you, I wouldn't need to choose between my dreams and you, that we would find a way to make both happen." They were silent for a few moments, the weight of that old argument hanging between them. "I was right," Caterina said finally. "Not about you having to stay, but about finding a way. We were young, scared, inflexible. We thought there were only two options, all or nothing. And now we're older, wiser. We've learned that life rarely offers simple solutions, but that doesn't mean we should give up fighting for what we want." Louise leaned forward, taking her hands. "What are you saying, Caterina?" "I'm saying that maybe it's time for us to try to find that third option we couldn't see 10 years ago." "And Beatriz? How would she fit into this?" "Beatriz has already fallen in love with you." Caterina smiled. "I don't know how, but in 2 days you've completely won over my daughter. She's an incredible girl, smart, curious, affectionate, just like her mother." "Louise, I need you to be completely honest with me. What do you really feel?" He looked into her eyes, seeing the vulnerability she was allowing him to see. "I feel that these have been the 2 most real days of my life in a decade. I feel that I found something I didn't even know I was looking for. And I feel that if I let you 2 slip away again, I'll regret it for the rest of my life. Even knowing what it means to change everything, your career, your life, your plans. Caterina, I spent 10 years building a life that looked perfect on paper, but that never made me truly happy. Maybe it's time to build a life that makes me feel alive, even if it's more uncertain." Caterina leaned in and kissed him more deeply this time. When they separated, there were tears in her eyes. "Then let's try," she whispered. "Let's find our third option." That night, lying in the hotel, Louise looked at the ceiling, thinking about all the changes that lay before him. It wouldn't be easy. There would be practical, emotional, and financial obstacles. But for the first time in years, he felt truly hopeful. He had a few more days in Porto to figure out how to make that dream a reality. And this time, he wasn't going to give up without a fight. On Thursday morning, Louise woke up to his phone ringing insistently. It was Ricardo, his partner in Sao Paulo, calling before 7 a.m. which was almost 11 a.m. in Brazil. "Luiz, man, where are you? The Portuguese investors are anxious to close the deal, and you haven't responded to my emails from yesterday." Luiz sat up in bed, running a hand through his hair. "Sorry, Ricardo. I had some unforeseen events here." "Unforeseen events? Man, this negotiation is worth millions. I need you to be 100% focused." I know. I'll take care of everything today." "Great. And one more thing. The American company I mentioned is also interested in talking. If we can close with them, we could be talking about expanding to 3 continents." After he hung up, Luiz looked out the hotel window. 3 continents. A week ago, this news would have been the pinnacle of his career. Now, it seemed like an added complication. He took a quick shower and went down for coffee. He had agreed to meet Katerina at lunchtime, but first, he needed to take care of the work issues he had neglected in the last few days. The meeting with the Portuguese investors took place at their office, a modern building in Porto's business district. Luiz presented the numbers, discussed strategies, and answered technical questions, but his mind was divided. With each passing hour, he felt as if he were living 2 parallel lives, that of a successful businessman and that of a man who had rediscovered love. "So, Mr. Luiz," the main director said at the end of the meeting, "when can we expect a definitive answer?" "I need a few more days to analyze all the details with my team in Brazil," Luiz replied. "Can we say by the end of next week?" "Perfect. We look forward to working with you." As he left the building, Luiz checked his phone and saw 3 messages from Katerina. "Hi, how's your work morning?" Beatriz asked. "If you're going to have lunch with us today, I'm at the office until 1 p.m. If you want to stop by." Luiz smiled for the first time that day. He took a taxi and headed to the address Katerina had sent. Her office was in a restored old building on the 2nd floor. It was small but cozy, with a large drawing table, a computer, and the walls covered with architectural plants and projects. Katerina was bent over some plans when he arrived. "Wow," Luiz said, looking around. "Is this where the magic happens?" "This is where I try to pay the bills," she replied with a smile, getting up to kiss him on the cheek. "How was your meeting?" "Good. Complicated, but good." "Complicated how?" Luiz sighed and sat down in a chair next to her table. "They want a definitive answer about the partnership by next week, and my partner is already talking about expanding to the United States as well. That's good, isn't it? It means your business is doing very well." "Yeah, it should be good." He was silent for a moment. "Katerina, can I ask you a question about work?" "Of course." "What is it like to work as a freelancer? I mean, really, without romanticizing it." Katerina sat on the edge of her desk, looking at him with curiosity. "It's a roller coaster. Some months you earn well, others you can barely pay the bills. You don't have paid vacations, a company health plan, or stability, but you also have total freedom over your projects and your time. And do you regret not having a traditional job? Sometimes, especially when Beatriz needs something, and I don't have the money available. But most of the time, no. I like choosing who I work with. I like being able to pick her up from school. I like not having to ask for permission to travel or do things my own way." Luiz nodded, absorbing the information. "Why are you asking?" Katerina questioned. "I'm thinking, if I were to live here, what would it be like? I mean, I could keep some clients from Brazil as a freelancer, but it would be a drastic reduction in income, at least at the beginning." "Luiz, are you really considering that?" "I am, but it's scary. I spent 10 years building a career, a reputation, a network of contacts. Starting from scratch at 32, it wouldn't be starting from scratch. You have experience, knowledge, international contacts. It would be more like a redirection." Before Luiz could answer, Katerina's phone rang. It was Beatrice's school. "Hello? What? Okay, I'll pick her up now. Thank you." "What is it?" Louise asked, seeing the worry on her face. "Beatriz fell during recess. No, it's nothing serious, but she hurt her knee and is crying. I need to go get her." "I'll go with you." "You don't have to. You have work." "Katerina," Louise interrupted, already standing up. "I want to go with you." At the school, they found Beatriz sitting in the nurse's office, with a bandage on her knee and her eyes red from crying. When she saw Louise with her mother, her little face lit up. "Louise, you came to pick me up." "Of course I did. How are you feeling, champ?" "It hurts a little, but it's better now. The nurse said I'll have a cool scar." Louise laughed, admiring how children could turn any situation into an adventure. They took Beatriz home, where Katerina made hot chocolate and cookies, while Louise invented stories about brave pirates who had scars from epic battles. In no time, the girl was laughing and had already forgotten the pain. "Louise," Beatriz said, as she drew sitting on the living room floor, "are you going to stay in Porto forever?" The question they had all been avoiding. Louise looked at Katerina, who also waited for the answer. "I don't know yet, Beatriz. It's a very difficult decision." "Why is it difficult? You like us, don't you?" "I like you guys very much. You're the most special people I know." "Then it's easy. You stay here with us." "Darling," Katerina intervened softly. "Sometimes adults have responsibilities that make decisions more complicated." "What kind of responsibilities?" Louise sat on the floor next to her. "Well, I have a job in Brazil. People who depend on me there. Commitments I've made." "But can't you do the same job here?" "Part of it, maybe, but it would be different." Beatrice frowned, thinking. "Mommy, when you didn't get that big job, you were sad, weren't you?" "I was." "But you didn't give up on being an architect, did you?" "No, of course not." "Then Louise doesn't have to give up his job either. He just needs to find a new way to do it." From her 7 years, Beatriz had perfectly summarized the dilemma Louise was facing. Katerina smiled, shaking her head. "She's right, you know," she said. "Maybe you're thinking of it as a choice between all or nothing, when in reality, there are many possibilities in between." That afternoon, after Beatriz went to play in her room, Louise and Katerina sat down to talk seriously about the future. "I need to tell you something," Louise said. "My partner called this morning. Besides the expansion to Portugal, an opportunity came up in the United States. If I accept, I'll be constantly traveling between 3 countries." "And you want to accept?" "A week ago, I would say yes without hesitation. Now, I don't know if I want a life where I don't have a fixed base, where I'm always traveling, always away from the people I love." "The people you love?" Louise took her hands. "Katerina, I love you. I've always loved you. And I know it's early to say this, but I'm also falling in love with Beatriz, with the life you've built, with the family you are." Katerina's eyes filled with tears. "I love you too, Louise. I never stopped loving you, but I'm afraid." "Afraid of what?" "Afraid that you'll make a rushed decision on impulse and then regret it. Afraid that Beatriz will get used to you and then you'll decide you want to go back to Brazil. Afraid of building a dream that could collapse. And I'm afraid of letting you two get away again," Louise replied. "I'm afraid of choosing financial security over real happiness." They were silent for a few minutes, each lost in their own thoughts. "Louise," Katerina said finally, "how about we do a test?" "What kind of test?" "You said you have a few more days here in Porto, right? How about you spend that time living as if you've already made the decision to stay? Work from here, see what your routine would be like. Spend time with us, as if we were a real family. And then? Then you go back to Brazil with all the information you need to make the right decision. Not just the emotional one, but the practical one too. Louise considered the proposal. It made sense. It would be a way to test the reality without burning all the bridges. And if at the end of this test I decide I want to stay, then we'll talk about the next steps. What would the logistics be? Where would you live? How would we organize our lives? And if I decide it's not viable? Katerina took a deep breath. Then at least we'll know we really tried, and we won't spend the rest of our lives wondering what if. Okay, Louise said, squeezing her hands. Let's do this test. But there's one condition, Katerina added. What? You have to be completely honest. With me, with Beatriz, and especially with yourself. If at any moment you feel that this isn't what you want, you tell me. We won't pretend everything is okay if it isn't. Deal. They kissed, sealing the agreement. It was a sensible plan, but Louise knew it would also be the most intense and decisive period of his life. That night at the hotel, Louise called Ricardo in Brazil. "How's it going over there?" his partner asked. "Good, but I need to tell you something. I'm extending my stay here for a few more days." "Why? Any problem with the investors?" "No, none. It's personal." "Personal? Man, you never mix personal life with work." "Maybe it's time to start," Louise replied. "Ricardo, I need you to handle things there alone for another week. I can work from here and do video conference meetings if necessary." "Louise, what's going on? You're not acting like yourself." "Maybe I'm finally acting like myself." After he hung up, Louise lay in bed, looking at the ceiling. He had taken the first real step toward a completely different life. Now it remained to be seen if that life was truly possible. Outside, Porto slept under a starry sky, and Louise felt that his life had reached a definitive turning point. In the coming days, he would find out if love was enough to rebuild everything from scratch. The only certainty he had was that this time, he wouldn't run from the answer. On Friday morning, Louise checked out of the hotel and carried his bags to Katerina's apartment. They had decided that if he really wanted to test what it would be like to live in Porto, he needed to experience real life, not the romanticized version of a tourist in a luxury hotel. "Are you sure about this?" Katerina asked, as she helped him settle his things in the small office that also served as a guest room. "It's going to be very different from a five-star hotel." "That's exactly what I need," Louise replied, connecting his laptop to the desk Katerina had cleared for him. "I want to know what it's really like." Beatriz was at school, so they had the morning to establish a routine. Louise set up his temporary workspace while Katerina worked on her projects at the living room table. The apartment was small, but they managed to create a functional environment for both of them. At 10 a.m., Louise had his first video conference with his team in Brazil. Ricardo and the other colleagues appeared on the screen, curious about the Portuguese office. "Hey Louise, man, where exactly are you?" Ricardo asked, trying to see the background of the call. "In the center of Porto. I'm testing working remotely from here for a few days." "Testing? For what?" "To see if it's viable to expand our operation here on a more permanent basis," Louise said, improvising a professional explanation for his personal situation. The meeting went well. They discussed some ongoing projects, resolved pending issues, and Louise realized that he could indeed work efficiently remotely. The time difference even helped. He could work during the morning in Portuguese time, when it was late in Sao Paulo, and have the afternoons free. When the call ended, Katerina was in the kitchen preparing lunch. "How was it?" she asked. "Better than I expected. Technology really allows you to work from anywhere nowadays." "And did your partner suspect anything?" "I think so, but he didn't say anything. Ricardo has known me for years. He knows when I'm hiding something." They had lunch together, talking about their respective projects. Louise was fascinated to see the detailed drawings Katerina was developing for the restoration of an 18th century house. "It's amazing how you manage to balance historical preservation with modern functionality," he said, studying the plans. "It's like a giant puzzle. Each solution creates a new problem, but when everything finally fits," she smiled, "it's the best feeling in the world." "I've thought of something," Louise said suddenly. "Of what?" "You talked about the difficulties of getting big clients here in Porto, but what if you didn't have to limit yourself to Portuguese clients?" "What do you mean?" "Well, with my network of contacts in Brazil, I could introduce you to investors who are restoring historic buildings in Sao Paulo, Rio, and Salvador, places with colonial architecture that need someone with your expertise." Katerina's eyes lit up. That would be incredible, but how would it work in practice?" "You would do remote consultations, occasional visits for supervision, partnerships with local architects. You would be the historical preservation expert, and they would handle the local execution." "Luis, this could be the solution to my financial problems, and it would be a way for us to mix our professional lives too. I would handle the business side, you would handle the technical side." For the first time since they had met again, Louise saw an expression of real hope on Katerina's face. Not just romantic hope, but practical, professional hope. At 4 p.m., they went to pick up Beatriz from school. The girl was euphoric to discover that Louise was temporarily living with them. "Does this mean you're going to be part of our family?" she asked with shining eyes. "We're testing what it would be like," Louise answered honestly. "And if the test works out, then we'll talk about making it permanent." "And if it doesn't work out?" Louise exchanged a look with Katerina. They had agreed to be honest with Beatriz about the situation. "Then I go back to Brazil, but we would still be special friends." Beatriz frowned, processing the information. "How long does the test last?" "A few days." "Then I'm going to be extra good, so you'll want to stay." Louise laughed, picking her up. "Beatriz, you're already extra good. The test isn't about you, it's about me. It's about whether I can be a good. It's about whether I can make you happy." "You already make us happy," she said simply. That afternoon, they lived their first real domestic routine. Beatriz did her homework at the living room table, while Louise answered emails, and Katerina worked on her projects. It was surprisingly natural. Each of them focused on their tasks, but aware of the other's presence. "Louise," Beatriz said suddenly, "can you help me with math?" "Of course." He sat next to her, patiently explaining how to solve division problems. Meanwhile, Katerina watched them discreetly, a soft smile on her face. "You're a good teacher," she commented afterward. "It's strange. I never thought I would like to teach, but with Beatriz, it's natural. She has this effect on people. She makes everyone want to be better." They had dinner together, a simple meal that Katerina prepared with Louise's help. Beatriz chattered about her day at school, talking about a science project on oceans she was developing. "Can I do it about the fish in Brazil?" she asked Louise. "Of course. Brazil has some of the most colorful fish in the world." "Really? What colors?" "Well, some are very bright blue, others are yellow, like the sun. Some have red stripes." Beatriz listened, fascinated, and Louise realized that he was painting a picture of Brazil that he had never noticed before. Not just as a place of professional opportunities, but as a place full of beauty and wonders. After Beatriz went to sleep, Louise and Katerina settled on the sofa with a bottle of wine. "How was your first official day living with us?" Katerina asked. "Better than I imagined. It was normal." "Normal? In a good way?" "Yeah. It wasn't a romantic fantasy, it was real. Work, responsibilities, domestic routine. and yet it was perfect. Even though it was cramped, even though we had to share space, even with Beatriz interrupting your work, especially because of all that, Louise replied. Caterina, I spent years living alone in a big apartment in Sao Paulo, working late, eating alone, watching TV alone. It was efficient, but it was empty. And today? Today, I worked better than I have in months. I helped an amazing girl with her homework, had dinner with 2 people I love, and I feel more fulfilled than on any day in the last 10 years. Caterina moved closer to him on the sofa. Louise, can I ask you something? Always. You're not idealizing this, are you? I mean, it was just one day. We haven't gone through difficult moments yet. Arguments, financial stress, real relationship problems. Louise considered the serious question. Maybe so, but do you know what impressed me the most today? What? It wasn't when things went perfectly. It was when Beatriz interrupted my video conference, asking if she could have a snack, and instead of getting annoyed, I smiled. It was when you got stressed out with a difficult client, and my first instinct was to want to help you, not to run from the drama. And what does that mean? It means you're helping me. It means my reaction to imperfect moments was completely different from what it would be with anyone else. With you and with Beatriz, the problems don't scare me. They make me want to fight to solve them. Caterina kissed him softly. I love you so much. I love you too. But we still have to be realistic. A relationship, a family, isn't just love. There are financial difficulties, making difficult decisions together. I know. And I want that. All of it. I want to split the bills. I want to worry about Beatriz's future. I want to argue about money, school, work, and all the boring and important things in real life, even knowing what it means to give up some of your independence. Caterina, independence for what? To work 12 hours a day to earn a lot of money, that I spend alone to travel the world, but never have a real home. She was silent for a few moments, absorbing his words. Louise, I need to tell you something that scares me. Go ahead. I'm starting to believe that this can work. I'm starting to imagine a future with you for real. And that terrifies me, because if it works out, we'll have to figure out how to build something that neither of us really knows how to do. 2 people who love each other, raising a family, building a life together. I think half the world doesn't know how to do it right. Louise laughed. The difference is that most people try anyway. That night, lying on the small sofa bed in the office, with the sounds of a family, a home, next door, Louise took out his phone and wrote some notes about the day. Day 1 of the test. Remote work worked perfectly. Domestic routine feels natural. Beatriz is incredible as always. Caterina is everything I always knew she was, but now with a strength and maturity that makes me feel at home. Literally, at home. And for the first time in a decade, Louise fell asleep knowing exactly where he wanted to be the next day. The weekend arrived with heavy rain and an unexpected test for the new family dynamic. Louise woke up on Saturday to the sound of Beatriz coughing in the next room. When he got up to check, he found Caterina already awake, taking her daughter's temperature. 38.5, she said, showing him the thermometer. I think she caught the flu. Beatriz was visibly down, very different from the energetic child of the past few days. Mommy, I have a headache, she mumbled. I know, darling. We'll give you some medicine, and you'll rest today. Louise watched Caterina immediately go into crisis mom mode. Efficient, calming, totally focused on her daughter. It was impressive to see how she could radiate security even when she was clearly worried. Can I help with anything? He offered. You could go to the pharmacy and get some medicine. I'll make a list. Of course. While Caterina took care of Beatriz, Louise got dressed and went out into the rain. The nearest pharmacy was 3 blocks away, and he ran back, completely soaked with the medications. "Luis," Katerina said when he arrived, "you're soaked." "It's nothing. How is she?" "A little better after the fever reducer, but it's going to be a long day." And it was. Beatriz spent the day alternating between restless sleep and moments of irritation typical of a sick child. Luis discovered aspects of family life that no theoretical conversation could have prepared him for. He saw Katerina functioning on just 2 hours of sleep because Beatriz had woken up several times during the night. He saw how a sick child could completely transform the dynamic of a house. He saw the real stress of a single mother dealing with a medical emergency alone. "Katerina," he said in the afternoon, when she was clearly exhausted, "why don't you go rest for a bit? I'll stay with her." "Are you sure? She gets pretty clingy when she's sick." "I'm sure." Louise sat on the bed next to Beatriz, who was half asleep but restless. When she woke up and saw it was him and not her mother, she frowned. "Where's Mommy?" "She went to rest for a little while. She's tired from taking care of you." "I want Mommy," Beatriz said in a tearful voice. "I know, darling, but Mommy needs to sleep to have the energy to keep taking care of you. How about I stay here with you?" With her large, feverish eyes, she looked at him. "Are you going to leave if I'm annoying?" The question broke Louise's heart. "Beatriz, you are never annoying, and I'm not going to leave because you're sick. The people who love us stay with us, especially when we need them." "Promise?" "I promise." She snuggled up next to him, and Louise stayed there, telling her stories in a low voice until she fell asleep again. Afterward, Katerina found them sleeping together. Beatriz nestled in Louise's arms, both breathing peacefully. "How was it?" Katerina whispered. "She asked if I was going to leave because she was being annoying," Louise replied in a low voice. "It made me think." "Think about what?" "About how abandoned she must have felt when her father disappeared, and about how scary it must be for her to get attached to me." Katerina sat on the edge of the bed, touching Beatriz's forehead to check her fever. "It's one of the hardest things about being a single mother," she said. "It's not just about protecting her physically, it's about protecting her heart, too. Every new person who comes into our lives is an emotional risk for her. And for you, too. And for me, too." Louise looked at Beatriz, sleeping in his arms. "Katerina, I had never really thought about what it means to take responsibility for a child, not just financially, but emotionally. To know that your decisions affect the heart of such a small and vulnerable person. It's scary, isn't it? It's terrifying. But also," he paused, searching for the right words, "it's also what gives meaning to everything. Taking care of her today, seeing how she trusted me, even though she felt bad, promising that I won't abandon her. It was the most important thing I've ever done in my life." Katerina kissed him gently on the forehead. "You were incredible today." "It was just one day. A difficult day. And what if there are many others like it?" "There will be," she said simply. "Sickness, nightmares, tantrums, school problems, adolescence. Being a parent is a marathon, not a sprint." "Being a parent," Louise repeated the words. "Is that what I would be? Her father?" "Only if you wanted to, and only if she wanted to, too. It wouldn't be automatic. It would be something you would build together over time." That night, after Beatriz felt better and managed to eat a little, the 3 of them watched a movie on the sofa. Beatriz was nestled between Louise and Katerina, finally relaxed and without a fever. "Louise," she said during a commercial, "thank you for taking care of me today." "You don't have to thank me, darling. It was a pleasure. My friend Sophia said that when daddies leave, they never come back. But you stayed even when I was sick and annoying." Louise exchanged a meaningful look with Katerina. "Beatriz, I'm not like Sophia's daddy. When I promise something, I keep it. So you promise you won't leave? The question they had all been avoiding had finally been asked directly. Luis felt the weight of the responsibility on his shoulders. Beatriz, he said carefully, I promise I won't leave because I changed my mind about you. If I ever need to travel, or if changes happen, I will talk to you and your mother first. I will never just disappear, but you might change your mind about us. No, Luis replied without hesitation. About you, I won't change my mind. You're too special. After Beatriz fell asleep, Luis and Katerina had their first serious conversation about the real challenges of the situation. Today was difficult, Katerina said. Not the fact that she was sick, but seeing you deal with it. It was intense. Intense how? Seeing you take care of her, making promises, taking on responsibilities. It all became very real, very fast. Do you regret letting me be a part of it? No, but I was scared of how much we already depend on you. In just a few days, you've become an essential part of our routine, and that's dangerous. Why dangerous? Katerina sighed. Because if you decide to go back to Brazil, it won't just be my heart that will break. It will be hers too. And she's already been abandoned before. Katerina, let me finish, she interrupted him gently. I'm not saying this to pressure you or scare you. I'm saying this because we need to be realistic about what's happening here. We're no longer two adults testing a relationship. We're three people building a family, and that changes things. Does it change everything? It changes everything. Because a family isn't something you can test for a few days and then decide if you want it or not. Family is a permanent commitment. Louise was silent for a few moments, absorbing the weight of her words. Katerina, can I ask you an honest question? Always. Do you really want me to stay forever? With every fiber of my being, she replied without hesitation. But not at any cost. Not if it means you feel trapped or obligated. Not if it means you giving up who you are. What if I told you that staying here, building a life with you, being Beatriz's father, what if I told you that this isn't giving up who I am, but finally discovering who I was, always meant to be? Katerina's eyes filled with tears. I would say that you need to be absolutely certain of that, because once you take on that role in her life, there's no going back. I know. And you need to know that being a father isn't just about the good moments. It's about waking up in the middle of the night when she has nightmares. It's about dealing with tantrums in the supermarket. It's about worrying about her grades in school. It's about having difficult conversations about bullying, or first love, or drugs. I know. It's about dividing your attention, your time, your money. It's about making decisions with her first. Katerina, Louise interrupted, taking her hands. Today, when Beatriz was sick and dependent, when you were exhausted, when everything was chaotic, I didn't want to be anywhere else in the world. This was the most real, most challenging, most genuine day I've lived in years. And that didn't scare you? It scared me, but it didn't make me want to run away. It made me want to stay even more. Katerina looked him in the eyes for a long moment. When you think about going back to Brazil now, what do you feel? Luis closed his eyes, allowing himself to truly imagine being back in Sao Paulo, in his empty apartment, in his lonely routine. I feel like I'm thinking about dying a little, he said finally, as if I'm considering trading a real life for a perfect one on paper. Maybe, Katerina said softly. Maybe it's time to stop calling this a test and call it a beginning. A beginning of what? The beginning of our life together. That night, for the first time since he had arrived in Porto, Louise fell asleep not as a temporary visitor, but as someone who was finally home to stay. Monday arrived with bright sun and a completely recovered Beatriz. Louise woke up to her bouncing in the room, eager to go to school and tell everyone how her almost daddy had taken care of her during her flu. Almost daddy? Louise asked, surprised by the term. That's what I told Grandma on the phone yesterday, Beatriz replied naturally. That you were my almost daddy, because you're still deciding if you want to stay. Katerina appeared at the bedroom door, clearly embarrassed. Beatriz, we talked about this. But it's true, Mommy. He's still in the test period. Louise laughed, impressed by the girl's perception. You know what, Beatriz? I think the test period is over. Really? Her eyes lit up. Really? And you know what the result was? What? Approved with flying colors. Beatriz jumped into his arms, and Katerina smiled, but Louise could see a shadow. When Beatriz went to school, they sat down to have coffee together. It was a normal Monday morning, but it carried the weight of important decisions. Louise, Katerina said carefully, about what you said to Beatriz. I meant what I said. The test is over, Katerina. I want to stay, even knowing everything it implies. Especially knowing everything it implies. Katerina took a deep breath. Then we need to talk about practical matters. How would this work in real life? I've already thought about it. I can keep some Brazilian clients as an independent consultant. With the time difference, I could work in the morning when it's late there and have the afternoons free for you. And financially, it would be a significant reduction in income, at least at the beginning. But with your Portuguese connections and my Brazilian contacts, we could build something together. You talked about working with restorations in Brazil. That could be the beginning of an international company. Katerina's eyes shone. You've really thought of all this? I spent all night thinking about it. Katerina, I want to build a life with you. A real life with long-term plans, shared goals, a future together. And your apartment in Sao Paulo? Your company? I'll be a consultant instead of an active partner. As for the apartment, I can sell or rent it. Those are just technical details. Technical details that represent 10 years of your life. 10 years building something that you discovered didn't make you happy. Now, I want to use that experience to build something that really matters. Louise's phone rang. It was Ricardo, calling from Brazil. Answer it, Katerina said. I want to resolve this. Louise, man, we need to talk urgently, Ricardo said as he answered. Hi, Ricardo. Go ahead. The Americans want an answer by Thursday, and the Portuguese are also pressuring us. I need to know what your plan is, because this affects the entire company structure. Louise looked at Katerina, who was listening to the conversation. Ricardo, can I call you back in an hour? I'm finishing a meeting here. An hour? It's almost 6 in the afternoon here. I'll be leaving the office. Then first thing tomorrow morning. Louise, what's going on over there? You're not acting like yourself. Maybe I'm finally acting like myself, Louise replied, echoing his words from days ago. After he hung up, Katerina looked at him with a serious expression. Louise, are you sure about what you're doing? This all seems very definitive, very fast. It is fast, he agreed, but it's not rash. It's a decision my heart made days ago, and my head has finally caught up. And what if you regret it? What if in 6 months you realize you missed the life you had? What if in 6 months I realize that this is the best decision I've ever made in my life? Katerina was silent for a few moments. I need to tell you something. What? I talked to my mom yesterday when you were at the supermarket. I told her about you, about us. And what did she say? She was happy, but also worried. She said I should be careful not to repeat the mistakes of the past. What mistakes? Of falling in love with someone who might leave. Of letting Beatriz get attached to someone who might disappear. Louise felt a weight in his chest. And you think that's what I'm doing? I don't know. I hope not. Understand one thing. If you stay, It can't just be for a few months or years. It has to be forever. Because Beatriz is going to grow up calling you Daddy. She's going to depend on you to teach her about life, about relationships, about everything. I understand that. Do you really understand? Because being a father isn't just about taking care of a cute 7-year-old. It's about being present when she needs support at 30. Katerina, Louise interrupted, taking her hands. Are you trying to scare me? I'm trying to make sure you understand what you're getting into. Because I wouldn't survive seeing Beatriz be abandoned again. And I wouldn't survive losing you a second time. Louise got up and went to her, kneeling beside her chair. Katerina, look at me. When she did, he continued. I promise you, and I promise Beatriz, that I won't leave. I won't change my mind. I won't regret it. I'm going to stay here and build a family with you, because that's what my heart wants, my mind approves, and my soul needs. How can you be so sure? Because for the first time in my life, when I think about the future, I see specific faces. I see you graduating. I see Beatriz growing up, graduating, maybe giving me grandchildren one day. I see us both growing old together in this city that I've learned to love. Katerina's eyes filled with tears. And why? He continued. When I imagine any other future, it looks black and white. It's only with you that I see colors. They kissed, and this time there was no hesitation, no doubt. They had decided to bet everything on love. Then, Katerina said when they separated, how about we start making real plans? What kind of plans? Well, you'll need a residence permit. We'll need to think about where to live. This apartment is too small for 3 people. You'll need to start a company here, or at least regularize your professional situation. And Beatriz, how do we explain it to her? I think she already knows. Katerina smiled. Children feel these things. She's been treating you as part of the family since day one. That afternoon, when they went to pick up Beatriz from school, she came running to them in a different way. She didn't just run to Katerina, as she always did. She ran to both of them, hugging both their legs at the same time. I had a great day. I told everyone that now I have a daddy. The teacher was very happy for me. Louise and Katerina looked at each other over her head. Darling, Katerina said gently, are you sure that's what you want? That you want Louise to be your daddy? I'm absolutely sure, Beatriz replied, with the seriousness typical of children when they talk about important things. He takes care of us, makes us laugh, and he's not going to leave. That's exactly what a daddy should be. And you, Louise, Katerina asked, are you sure you want to be her daddy? Louise looked at Beatriz, who was watching him expectantly, and felt something definitively click into place in his chest. I'm absolutely sure, he said, echoing her words. It would be the greatest honor of my life. That night, after Beatriz had gone to sleep, but not before saying goodnight to Mommy and Daddy, Louise and Katerina sat down to plan their future together. I need to call Ricardo tomorrow and explain everything, Louise said. Are you nervous? A little, but more excited than nervous. Excited to start our life for real. Our life, Katerina repeated, smiling. I like the sound of that. Me too. And you know what else? What? For the first time in years. Outside, Porto slept under a starry sky, and inside the small apartment, a new family had been born, not just out of love, but out of the courage to bet on what truly matters. Louise took out his phone and deleted the note he had written days ago about the test. In its place, he wrote, First day of our life together. Beatriz called me Daddy for the first time. Katerina and I officially decided that we're going to build a family. I spoke to the future, and it looks bright. And for the first time in his adult life, Louise fell asleep knowing exactly who he was and where he belonged. 6 months later, Louise was in the kitchen preparing breakfast when he heard Beatriz shouting with joy in the room. Katerina appeared, holding an official paper, smiling. "It's here," she said simply. "Your residency permit is official. You are now legally Portuguese." Beatriz came running, already dressed for school. "Daddy, this means you can never leave again, right?" "It means exactly that, Princess." Louise picked her up, looking out the window of the apartment that was now officially his home. Porto was waking up under the golden morning sun, and he could see the Douro River shining in the distance. "And you know what else it means, Beatriz?" "What?" "It means that now I can officially say that this is my family, my city, my life." Katerina came closer, hugging both of them. "And it means that our love story finally has the ending it always deserved." "Ending?" Beatriz frowned. "But you're not going to stop loving each other, are you?" Louise and Katerina laughed. "No, darling," Katerina explained. "Now begins the story of how we live happily ever after." "Oh," Beatriz smiled. "I want to help write that part." "You already are," Louise said, kissing her forehead. "Every single day." That morning, as they walked to Beatriz's school together, Louise thought about how a simple business trip had turned into the most important journey of his life. He had left Brazil in search of professional opportunities and found something infinitely more valuable: a home. And when Beatriz waved from the school door, shouting, "Bye, Daddy, bye, Mommy!" Louise knew that all the difficult choices, all the changes, all the risks had been worth it. After all, some love stories deserve a second chance, and when they get it, they can become even more beautiful than the first time.